In the far reaches of the galaxy, on a cold and shining space station above Earth, something unusual was about to happen. Ships from the Kalor Dominion, a powerful alien empire, arrived quietly without warning. These ships were silver and smooth, shaped like long wings, and they carried important guests. One of them was Baron Thalos, a respected and feared alien noble. He was tall, with skin like polished stone, and eyes like glowing glass. But what surprised the humans more was not the Baron himself, but the young alien woman who walked beside him. Her name was Alira. She had rich teal-blue skin, soft natural beauty, and long dark hair that moved like silk in the station's gentle airflow. She was quiet, too quiet. In fact, she had never spoken a single word in her entire life. Not even to her own father. The Earth leaders were unsure why the Baron had come. But during a private meeting in the main hall of the Orbital Council Station, he explained his purpose. The Baron stood tall before the Earth commander and said in a serious voice, "As part of our ancient peace pact, I give you my daughter. Let her live among humans for 1 year. She will observe, she will learn, and maybe she will find her voice." The room fell silent. No one expected this. Giving his daughter to humans? Why now? The human commander looked surprised. "Baron Thalos, forgive me, but your daughter, she cannot speak. How will she live here? How will she communicate?" "She will adapt," the Baron replied. "If she chooses to speak, it will be with your people." Some thought the Baron was giving her away like an old gift. Others wondered if this was a hidden test. But one man stepped forward, Daniel, a young human science officer with kind eyes and a calm voice. "I'll take her," Daniel said. "She can stay with me on my research station near Mars. It's quiet, safe, and I'll do my best to help her." The Baron looked at him, eyes sharp like a hawk. Then he nodded. "Very well. She is yours to care for. But remember, she hears more than you think." Without another word, the Baron turned and left. Alira stood still for a moment, then slowly followed Daniel, her steps silent, her expression unreadable. Daniel's station was small. It floated peacefully above Mars, used mostly for studying alien plants and rocks. It had only 2 main rooms, a control hub and a lab. When Alira entered, she didn't explore or show surprise. She simply sat in a chair and looked out the window, watching the red planet below. Daniel wasn't sure how to begin. He brought her some food, fruit, bread, and a warm drink. She didn't eat much, but gave a small nod as thanks. Every day, Daniel tried to talk to her. "Do you want to learn English?" he asked, holding up picture cards. "This is a sun. This is a ship. This is a star." She watched him closely, but said nothing. He played soft music and noticed her head tilt slightly when the melody changed. He showed her how the station worked, how the computers functioned, and even introduced her to the AI system called Mira. "Hello, Alira," Mira said in a soft, friendly voice. "I am Mira. I help Daniel with the station. I know many languages. Would you like to learn?" Alira blinked, but again stayed quiet. Days passed. She began to follow Daniel during his routine. She would sit nearby as he worked. She helped organize tools, hand him scanners, and even cleaned up without being asked. Daniel noticed something else too. She listened to everything. She didn't speak, but she understood. One morning, Daniel found a small paper on the table. On it was a hand-drawn picture, Alira's work. It showed the station, Mars, and 2 small figures. One was Daniel, the other clearly her. Between them was a small light. Daniel smiled. "You drew this?" he asked. Alira gave the smallest of nods. He pointed at the light in the middle. "Is this us talking?" Alira slowly reached over and placed her hand on the light. Daniel felt something deep inside, like a warm understanding. Not words, but a quiet connection. Still, she didn't speak. Not yet. One evening, Daniel tried something new. He turned off all lights in the station except the window lights, letting the red glow of Mars fill the room. He sat down with a small musical instrument and began playing a simple tune. Alira stood by the window, unmoving. But then, something strange happened. She started humming. It was soft, barely a whisper of sound, but it was real. Daniel looked up, surprised. "Alira, you're humming." She quickly stopped, as if afraid. No, it's okay," he said gently. "It's beautiful." She looked at him, uncertain. He smiled. "You don't have to be afraid here. You can hum, or sing, or say nothing. You're safe with me." That night, Alira didn't hum again. But when she walked past Daniel, she gently brushed her fingers across his hand. It wasn't a handshake. It wasn't just touch. It was trust. Back on Earth, the news of Alira's stay with a human officer was spreading. Some alien nobles called it foolish. Others whispered about an old legend, a child born with silence, who would one day speak words that could change the galaxy. Baron Thalos sat alone in his ship, staring at a tiny image of his daughter. He said quietly, "If she is truly the one, then they will come for her." He closed his eyes. And the human must be ready. To be continued. Alira had now lived on Daniel's research station for 3 weeks. The days were quiet, filled with routine work and simple meals. Daniel continued speaking to her every day. Sometimes he showed her pictures of Earth animals. Sometimes he explained how the machines on the station worked. Alira never answered with words, but her eyes followed every detail. She remembered everything. She had started doing small things that made Daniel smile. When he forgot to turn off a light, she would switch it off. When he dropped a tool, she picked it up before he could bend down. She moved quietly, but always noticed everything. Daniel talked to her like a friend. He didn't treat her like a guest or a science project. That made Alira feel something warm inside, something she had not felt before. One afternoon, Daniel was fixing a sensor on the outer wall of the station. He wore his suit and helmet, floating gently in space. Alira watched through the window, her hands resting on the glass. She seemed worried, though she didn't know why. Suddenly, the sensor sparked. There was a jolt of electricity, and Daniel's voice came through the radio. "Ah, I think it shocked me. Hold on." He lost grip on the metal beam and started drifting. His safety cable pulled tight, stopping him from floating away, but his oxygen levels dropped fast. The AI Mira spoke from the station's speakers. "Oxygen leak detected. Daniel's life is in danger." Alira didn't think. She ran to the control room and pressed buttons she had only watched Daniel use before. Mira gave her a warning. Unauthorized access. Alira placed her hand on the screen and closed her eyes. The screen changed. It recognized her touch. "Mira," Alira whispered, not aloud, but in her thoughts. Something clicked inside the AI. A signal passed through. The system, like a key, unlocking a door. The airlock opened. Daniel floated in slowly with Mira's help, coughing but alive. He fell to the floor, pulling off his helmet. "That was close," he said between breaths. He looked up and saw Alira kneeling beside him, her hand on his chest, her face full of worry. For the first time, he saw a tear roll down her cheek. Then, he heard it, not through his ears but inside his mind. "Don't leave," the voice said. It was soft, full of emotion. He looked at her, stunned. "Was that you?" She pulled her hand away and backed up slowly. She didn't speak again. Her face showed fear, not of him, but of herself. Daniel didn't push her. He just sat quietly, breathing deeply, and gave her a soft smile. "Thank you." That night, Alira didn't sleep. She stood near the window watching the stars. Her heart was racing. Something inside her had broken open, something long locked away. The next morning, Daniel brought her a warm drink and said gently, "You spoke to me, not with your mouth, but I heard you." Alira didn't move. Daniel showed her a small screen. On it, he had typed the words, "Do you want to talk like this?" Alira looked at the screen, then slowly shook her head. Daniel typed again, "How did you connect with Mira?" She didn't answer. Mira, the AI, spoke softly. "When she touched the system, I received a signal pattern I have never seen. It was like a living command." Daniel looked at Alira with new eyes. "You're more than we know, aren't you?" Alira stared down, then took the stylus from his hand and drew a simple shape on the screen, a circle inside a larger circle. Daniel studied it. "Is that a mind inside another mind?" She nodded. "Is it how you speak? Through connection?" She nodded again. Daniel sat back. "Alira, do others from your world know you can do this?" She looked up, her eyes sad. He understood. You had to hide it. He knew she didn't want to talk about it, so he didn't ask more questions. In the following days, Alira became more open with her expressions. She smiled faintly when Daniel told her a joke. She pointed at stars through the window and tapped her finger twice when she saw Mars. Daniel created a special board with images and lights. Alira used it to point at ideas, showing what she wanted or what she noticed. She learned the word music and pointed to it often. Daniel played songs for her each evening. She especially liked soft music, piano, wind instruments, and simple melodies. Sometimes she closed her eyes and moved her fingers like she was drawing sound in the air. Mira continued to learn from her too. The AI started adjusting the station's systems to match Alira's moods. Warmer lights when she was calm, gentle airflow when she was resting. It was like the station itself understood her better than any other place ever had. But far across the galaxy, on the homeworld of the Kalor Dominion, others were watching. A noble named Lord Vexar, rival to Baron Thalos, had spies on Earth. One of his agents reported, "The girl has begun to respond. The human officer may have triggered her awakening." Vexar's eyes narrowed. "The mute child with the mind voice. She must not fully awaken. If she does, even the strongest armies will listen to her." He stood and gave a cruel smile. "Send a scout ship, quietly. I want to see her with my own eyes." Back on the station, Daniel and Alira sat near the large viewing window, sharing a quiet evening. Daniel showed her a small video of Earth, a waterfall, green forests, and birds flying through the air. Alira touched the screen gently and looked at Daniel. Her eyes said something he couldn't quite understand. "You want to go there one day?" he asked. She nodded. "I'll take you," he said softly. "One day we'll go to Earth together." Then Alira surprised him. She took his hand slowly, gently, and held it between both of hers. And in that moment, Daniel didn't hear words, but he felt something, a feeling of peace, a feeling of trust, a silent promise. To be continued. The days passed quietly on the research station near Mars. Daniel kept teaching Alira, and Alira kept watching and learning. She still didn't speak out loud, but her eyes spoke with every glance. Her hands moved gently, giving answers without words. The connection between her and Daniel grew stronger every day. One morning, something strange happened. Daniel was reviewing star charts in the control room when he felt a soft presence behind him. He turned and saw Alira standing there, holding a small drawing. It showed a strange machine. Lines flowed from the machine into people's heads, like light or sound. At the center was a symbol Daniel didn't understand. "What is this?" he asked gently. Alira looked at the drawing, then tapped her finger on the center symbol. Mira, the AI, scanned the symbol. "Unknown language. Origin not found in database. Daniel looked closer. Did you see this in a dream? Alira didn't answer. Instead, she reached out and gently touched Daniel's forehead. And then, he saw it. Not with his eyes, but in his mind. He was standing in a field of glowing trees, and in front of him was a younger version of Alira. She was smiling. Around her, others stood, Calorians, humans, even robotic beings, all looking calm, connected. There was no fear, no anger, only peace. The vision ended in seconds. Daniel gasped. That was... Your memory? Alira nodded. Mira's voice spoke again. Energy signature detected during contact. Brain waves briefly synchronized. Unusual. Daniel sat down, his hands shaking slightly, not from fear, but from wonder. You can share memories. You can show ideas from your mind. Alira looked at him calmly. Then, for the first time since arriving, she picked up the stylus and wrote on the screen. It's not just memory, it's truth. Daniel read the words again. What truth? Alira wrote again. The truth they feared. Later that night, Daniel opened a private data channel and began searching records about the Keylor Dominion. Most of the files were political reports or trade records. But deep in an old archive, he found something strange. A file marked Whisper of the Silent One, year 197 before Union. The file talked about a Keylor legend, an ancient child born without voice, who carried the inner sound, a way to reach others not with words but with feeling, emotion, and memory. This child was said to have the voice of unity. Daniel whispered to himself, Voice of unity. Is that what Alira is? Mira answered quietly. The pattern matches. Energy readings during her contact with you match the description. Daniel leaned back. So they feared her because she could make people understand each other? Because she could stop wars? Possibly, Mira replied. Daniel sighed. She's not just silent. She's special. Alira had gone to the viewing window again. She often stood there at night, watching the stars. Daniel walked to her side and pointed at one bright light. That's Earth, he said softly. Alira nodded slowly. I think your father sent you here for a reason, not just to learn. Maybe to grow. Maybe even to be free. Alira turned to look at him. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. She raised her hand and pointed at him. Then she tapped her own chest. Then she pointed at the stars. Daniel understood. She was saying, You, me, together in this world. He smiled. Yes, together. But while peace filled the small station, danger was coming from afar. A black scout ship entered the outer edge of the solar system. It had no markings, no flag. It belonged to Lord Vexar, an enemy of Baron Thalos. Inside the ship, Vexar watched a screen showing Alira's energy readings from her earlier mental contact. She's waking up, he said darkly. If she spreads this power, even warriors will drop their weapons. We cannot allow that. Voice from the ship's control room asked, Should we capture her? No, Vexar said. Not yet. Let us see what she does next. Watch the human closely. If she binds with him fully, we strike. Back on the station, Daniel continued, trying to understand Alira's abilities. He set up a small lab area where she could interact with light and sound systems. Alira showed a surprising talent. She could shape patterns using only her thoughts. Colored lights responded to her emotions. One day, she stood near the control table and reached out her hand. Without touching anything, she moved the holographic display. A blue wave passed through the station's systems, calming Mira's voice tone and slowing the heartbeat sensors. Daniel was amazed. You're not just showing memories. You're changing how things feel. Alira gave him a look that was almost playful. Daniel smiled. You've been hiding your strength. She gave a small nod. But why? She picked up the stylus again and wrote, "Because they are afraid of peace." Daniel stared at the words. He didn't speak for a long moment. Then he said softly, "That's why they kept you silent." Alira added one more line, "But you are not afraid." Daniel felt a wave of emotion. He reached out and gently touched her hand. "No, I'm not afraid of you. I believe in you." Alira looked down at their hands touching, and then, very softly, she whispered one word out loud. "Daniel." It was small, quiet, but clear. He looked at her, stunned. "You said my name." Her lips trembled slightly, but her eyes were strong. "I heard it," he said again. "You said it." She nodded just once. That night, the stars outside seemed brighter, but far away, in the Black Scout ship. Lord Vexar saw the data spike. "She spoke," he said coldly. "Prepare the capture plan. To be continued." Alira's voice was still soft in Daniel's mind. One word, just one word, Daniel. But it changed everything. For days he had seen her express herself with her hands, her eyes, her drawings. But now, hearing her speak aloud, even a single word felt like a door opening. Daniel didn't push her to speak more. He didn't ask questions. He just smiled at her and said gently, "Thank you." Alira said nothing in return, but her expression was calm, peaceful. A new light shone in her eyes. Something had changed. She was no longer just a quiet guest. She was part of the station now. She was part of his world. That same evening, Daniel made a secure call to Earth's Space Command. He spoke directly to a senior officer. "I need access to Keylor historical data, especially anything about the voice of unity," he said. The officer on screen looked surprised. "That's an old myth, isn't it? The Kalorians don't talk about it anymore." "I don't think it's a myth," Daniel replied. "I think it's real. And I think Alira is the one." The officer paused. "If that's true, you need to be careful. Many would see her as a threat." "I know," Daniel said quietly. He didn't mention the name Lord Vexar. Not yet. On the station, Alira began practicing more with Mira, the AI. Without touching any controls, she could change temperature, lighting, and even adjust gravity slightly. She didn't use these powers often, but Mira noticed that when Alira focused, energy flowed through the station like music. Daniel created a quiet room just for her, a space with soft lights, warm colors, and a digital painting screen. Alira began drawing more symbols, shapes, and sometimes scenes from other places. One image showed a large hall with alien leaders arguing. Another showed a child sitting alone in the corner, eyes closed. That child was her. Daniel understood. "They didn't listen to you, so you stayed silent." Alira nodded. She wrote one line on the screen. "Speaking only matters when someone listens." Daniel sat beside her. "I'm listening." She smiled, only a little, but it was the first real smile he had seen. But peace didn't last. That same week, Mira detected a strange signal approaching the station. A small black ship had entered Mars orbit. It wasn't registered with Earth or Keylor. It was silent, hidden, and fast. Daniel checked the cameras. "That's not one of ours." Mira's voice became serious. "Vessel is using stealth code similar to old Keylor spy crafts. Approach speed increasing." Daniel's heart raced. "They're coming for her." He turned to Alira. She was standing by the window again. She had already sensed the danger. "They know you spoke," he said softly. "They're afraid." Alira didn't move. She just stared out at the stars. Daniel walked closer. "We can run. We can hide." She shook her head slowly. "I'm not hiding anymore." She didn't say the words out loud, but Daniel felt them in his mind. Strong, clear. She turned and pointed to the central hub of the station. Daniel understood. "You want to connect to the galaxy?" She nodded. Daniel and Alira moved quickly to the hub. Mira opened the long-range transmitter. Alira placed her hand on the core panel. The station lights flickered as a wave of soft blue energy spread through the systems. "Signal extending across known channels," Mira reported. "All frequencies, all species. Translation active." Alira closed her eyes, and then she spoke. Not through sound, but through emotion, memory, and shared thoughts. Across planets, spaceports, and battle zones, people paused. They felt her. They saw flashes of her life, lonely halls, quiet rooms, a girl who could feel others' pain but could not share her own. They saw her meeting Daniel. They felt her joy, fear, trust, and hope. Her message was simple. "I do not want power. I only want peace." Across the galaxy, soldiers lowered weapons. Children smiled. AI systems paused, unsure how to describe the wave of emotion passing through their circuits. On the moon base, Earth leaders watched in silence. On the Keylor homeworld, Baron Thalos stood up, eyes full of tears. "She found her voice," he whispered. But in the black scout ship, Lord Vexar's face was full of anger. "Too late. She's already begun," he growled. "Do we attack?" asked his pilot. Vexar nodded. "Yes. Now." The ship launched a quiet pulse. A disabling wave meant to shut down the station's systems and capture Alira. Inside the station, alarms rang. External. "Energy blast approaching," Mira warned. Daniel rushed to the control room. "Shields up!" Mira tried, but the pulse hit hard. Lights went dark. Gravity shifted. Panels sparked. Daniel fell, hitting the floor hard. He looked up to see Alira standing still, her hair floating in the zero-gravity air. Her eyes were glowing softly. Then, everything stopped. The alarms silenced. The flickering lights froze mid-blink. The whole station paused in time. Alira raised her hands, and in the silence, she spoke out loud. "Stop." Her voice was clear, full of strength, yet calm like wind through trees. Outside, the black ship froze mid-approach. Its engines stalled. Vexar and his crew couldn't move. Their screens showed only one thing: Alira's face. She looked at them, not with anger, but with deep understanding. "You are afraid of peace," she said gently. "But peace is stronger than fear." The ship backed away, slowly, quietly. Then it vanished into space. When the station came back online, Daniel was still sitting on the floor, staring at her. "You stopped them," he whispered. Alira walked over and held out her hand. She helped him stand. "I spoke," she said softly. Daniel smiled. "Yes, you did." Mira added quietly, "Signal from this station has been received on over 100 planets. Messages of peace are spreading." Alira looked out the window again. The stars were no longer silent. They were listening, to be continued. The message Alira sent from the station changed everything. Across the galaxy, people were talking. On Earth, Mars, and many alien worlds, leaders and scientists were asking the same question. Who is this girl with the voice that touches the heart? Some people called her a miracle. Others called her dangerous. But everyone agreed on one thing. Alira was not silent anymore. Her peaceful message had spread faster than any weapon, but it also brought trouble. Ships from different alien empires started. Moving toward Mars, they didn't bring gifts or greetings. They brought sensors, drones, and watchers. Some came quietly, pretending to observe. Others came to spy. All of them wanted to see the girl who made even enemies stop fighting. Daniel and Alira were still on the station, trying to stay calm. But the tension was growing. Mira, the station AI, spoke softly one morning. 5 ships have entered orbit. Their weapons are not active, but their scanning systems are targeting this station. Daniel frowned. They're watching her. He looked over at Alira. She sat at the window again, drawing on her digital pad. Her picture showed two hands reaching for each other, but not touching. They want to control her, Daniel said. They think she's a tool. Alira didn't stop drawing. She just said one word. Father. Daniel turned. Your father? You feel him? She nodded. Her fingers moved faster across the screen. She drew a ship, larger than the others, with curved wings and the royal mark of the Keylor Dominion. An hour later, Mira made a new announcement. Ship approaching. Identity confirmed. Baron Thalos. Daniel stood still for a moment. He's here. The Keylor ship moved slowly, with no weapons charged. It stopped near the station and sent a simple message. Permission to board. I come alone. Daniel allowed it. Soon the docking gate opened, and Baron Thalos stepped into the station. He wore dark robes, his face serious and quiet. But his eyes were different now. They were not cold. They were full of emotion. He looked at Alira. She stood up slowly. Neither of them spoke right away. Then, in a soft voice, Alira said, You gave me away. The Baron looked down. Yes. You were afraid, she added. He nodded. Yes. Daniel stayed silent. He understood. This moment wasn't his. The Baron took a deep breath. I did it because I knew they would come for you, but I also knew the humans would protect you. And I was right. Alira's eyes became wet with tears, but she didn't let them fall. You didn't trust me, she whispered. I was wrong, he said. I thought keeping you silent would keep you safe, but now I see. Your voice is the only thing that can save us all. Alira stepped forward and placed her hand on her father's chest. In that moment, a quiet wave passed through the room. Daniel felt it like a breeze of warmth. He saw flashes of Alira's childhood, her walking alone in gardens, her trying to speak, her father turning away, and then a memory of the Baron himself, watching from afar, crying in silence, afraid, to let the galaxy know his daughter was more powerful than kings. Daniel felt his throat tighten. These were not just memories. They were truth. After a while, the Baron sat down with Daniel and Alira. We must act fast, the Baron said. Other empires will want to take her. They will say they want peace, but they truly want control. Daniel nodded. We've already seen their ships circling. The Baron leaned forward. We need to speak before they do. Let Alira stand. Before the Council of Worlds. Let her speak for herself. Daniel looked at Alira. Do you want that? She didn't answer right away. Then she spoke clearly, her voice soft but firm. Yes. The next day, preparations began. Mira helped, send messages to the leaders of many worlds. A special gathering was planned on the moon base, where different species often met for peaceful talks. As Alira got ready to leave the station, Daniel gave her a small gift. It was a pendant shaped like two stars connected by a single beam of light. She looked at it curiously. It's nothing special, Daniel said with a small smile. Just something to remind you. I believe in you. Alira took it and placed it gently around her neck. Then she surprised him. She reached out and hugged him. It was a quiet moment. No words. Just feeling. The trip to the moon base was short. Alira, Daniel, and Baron Thalos arrived together. The Grand Hall was already filled with leaders, humans, Calorians, insectoid diplomats from the planet Ura, cloud-like beings from Ventros, and even silent metal forms from the robot colonies. Everyone turned when Alira entered. The room became still. Some looked with awe, others with doubt, but no one spoke. Alira stepped forward slowly. She wore a simple robe, the pendant shining softly at her neck. She stood in the center of the round hall and closed her eyes. She did not shout. She did not argue. She shared. In a wave of silent connection, every mind in the room received her message. She showed them her memories, her dreams, her fears, her truth. She showed them a world where voices didn't fight, but understood. She showed them war, pain, and power, but also peace, healing, and hope. And finally she spoke aloud. I am not a weapon. I am not your prize. I am only a voice. And I want peace. The leaders looked at each other. For once, no one shouted back. The hall remained still. And then, one by one, they stood in respect. The meeting was over, but the message had just begun, to be continued. The great hall on the moon base remained quiet even after Alira's message ended. No one clapped, no one cheered. They just stood silently, because what they felt was not just words. It was something deeper. Her message had entered their minds, their memories, and their hearts. It was not a speech. It was truth shared without force. Alira stood in the center, calm and steady. Her pendant glowed faintly at her neck, reflecting the soft lights above. Daniel stood nearby, proud but watchful. Baron Thalos stood behind his daughter, silent, no longer as a ruler, but as a father. Then, one by one, the leaders sat back down. A human ambassador stood up first. She did not use weapons, he said. She did not demand power, yet her voice reached more people than any army ever could. The insectoid diplomat from Ura clicked his mandibles and said through his translator, "She makes minds see peace. That is rare. That is strong." Another leader from the robotic colonies spoke next. "Her signal entered our core systems. It did not harm us. It calmed us. This has never happened before." Alira bowed slightly. "Thank you." Her voice was quiet, but it echoed in the hall. Then a voice came from the side. Cold, sharp. It was Lord Vexar. He had arrived without being invited. His silver cape swayed as he stepped forward. "She is dangerous," he said loudly. "This girl may speak of peace now, but what happens when her voice controls minds? What if she forces peace like a prison?" The room tensed. Vexar walked closer. "Power like hers has no limits. Today it touches hearts. Tomorrow it may command armies. Are we ready to take that risk?" Baron Thalos stepped forward. "She has never forced anyone. Her gift is to connect, not to control." Vexar pointed at Alira. "Then let her prove it. If she can speak, let her also choose silence. Let her stay away from politics. Let her live a quiet life and not interfere." Daniel frowned. "You want her to disappear again. To be silent, so the powerful can speak louder." Vexar ignored him. "We cannot build peace on one person's voice. That is not unity. That is weakness." For a moment, no one moved. Then Alira walked forward, facing Vexar. She didn't speak. She just looked into his eyes. Vexar suddenly froze. His face tightened. His breathing slowed. The entire hall watched in silence. Then Vexar stepped back, looking shocked. He sat down. No one asked what she showed him, but whatever it was, it had made him quiet. After the meeting, Alira walked with Daniel and her father through the corridors of the moon base. Daniel said softly, "You handled that well." Alira replied, "He was afraid." Baron Thalos added, "Many fear peace because they only understand control." Daniel looked at them both. "So what now?" Thalos turned to Alira. "The choice is yours. Do you wish to speak again to the galaxy, or do you wish to live a quiet life?" Alira didn't answer right away. Later, back in the quiet room given to her, she sat alone by the window. She thought about her childhood, the silent halls of her home, the days she tried to speak, only to feel her father's fear, the time she met Daniel, the first time she whispered his name. The day she spoke to the stars, she placed her hand over her heart and made her choice. 3 days later, Alira sent another message, this time a clear one, shared across the galaxy. But it was different. It was not a command, not even a vision. It was an invitation, a call to all beings, human, alien, robotic, organic, to come together and form something new. A group not led by weapons or wealth, but by understanding. She called it the Circle of Voices, a peaceful council, open to all. Guided not by rules, but by listening. At first, people laughed at the idea, but then, slowly, others joined. A young robot from the mining colony sent a signal. I volunteer to listen. A bird-like alien teacher from a distant moon said, I will teach others to feel truth like she does. Even a general from Earth sent a message. We've tried weapons long enough. I'm ready to try words. The circle began to grow quietly, gently, but with strength. Daniel and Alira returned to their station near Mars. It was home now. Mira welcomed them back. Welcome home, Alira. Signal from across 7 planets received today. Circle members rising. Daniel walked with Alira to the viewing window. He handed her a small plant growing in a glass jar. From Earth, he said. A gift from a school. The children wrote letters saying thank you. Alira smiled and placed the jar on the table. Then, she looked out at the stars. Are you happy? Daniel asked. Alira nodded. But tired, she said with a soft laugh. Daniel laughed too. That's okay. Even heroes need rest. Alira turned to him and whispered, You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Daniel looked at her gently. You didn't need my belief. You just needed someone to remind you who you were. She reached for his hand, and together they watched the stars in silence. But this silence was different. It was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of peace. To be continued. The circle of voices continued to grow. What started as a quiet idea became something real, something that could not be ignored. Every week more people joined. Some were leaders, some were farmers, teachers, or travelers. But they all shared the same hope, a peaceful future built on understanding. No one expected it to move so fast. But the galaxy had been tired of war for too long. Daniel and Alira stayed on their small station near Mars. They did not wear crowns or lead with commands. They simply lived and listened. Daniel took care of plants sent by children from Earth. Alira kept drawing new symbols, new ideas. Mira, the AI, became part of their family, helping connect messages and sharing updates from the circle. One morning, Mira spoke gently. Alira, a message has arrived. From the Keylor Dominion. Alira walked to the screen. Baron Thalos appeared. Her father. He looked proud and calm. My daughter, he said, the High Council has voted. They wish to offer you the title of Peace Ambassador for all Keylor people. Alira looked at Daniel. She did not smile, but her eyes shone with light. I accept, she said. The Baron nodded. Then I will step down. The people want your voice, not mine. I will return to my garden and enjoy the silence you have given. Me? For the first time, Daniel saw the Baron laugh softly. I am proud of you, Alira. Then the message ended. Soon after, a special ship came to take Alira to her first meeting as Peace Ambassador. But before she left, she and Daniel stood together at the viewing window one last time. Daniel held out a small package. Open it, he said. Alira opened it slowly. Inside was a book, not a digital file, but a real book, with paper pages. On the cover it said, The Voice That Changed the Stars. Alira looked up, confused. Daniel smiled.
It's your story. I wrote it. So others can learn what you did. So children will know that even someone born in silence can help the whole galaxy speak. She held the book close to her chest. Then, very gently, she whispered, "Thank you." Daniel
Looked at her. "Are you ready?" She nodded. "I'm not afraid anymore." As the ship waited outside, Mira spoke again. "Alira, 10 more planets have joined the circle. Message requests rising faster than systems can process." Alira smiled. "Then we must teach them how to listen." She hugged Daniel. It was a long, quiet hug. Neither of them spoke, because some feelings don't need words. Then Alira stepped onto the ship and left. Time passed. Alira traveled across the stars. She met leaders who once ruled through fear. Now they sat in circles listening to each other. She visited battlefields that were now schools. She walked on planets that had never seen peace and brought hope. Everywhere she went, she didn't speak much, but when she did, people listened. They listened with their hearts. Daniel stayed at the Mars station. He continued his work, caring for the station and growing food. He often received messages from Alira, sometimes just simple drawings or quiet thoughts. Mira helped him keep track of the circle's growth. One day she said, "Daniel, do you wish to see the impact of her voice?" Daniel nodded. Mira showed a map of the galaxy. Bright dots glowed across it, each one a planet, a moon, or a station where the circle had reached. The light spread like water flowing into empty land. Daniel whispered, "She did it." Mira replied, "You both did." Years later, a ceremony was held on the moon base. It was the first official gathering of the Galactic Peace Union, built on the foundation of the Circle of Voices. Every species sent a representative, and in the center of the hall, Alira stood. She was older now, still calm, still quiet, but her presence filled the room. She looked around the circle. Then she said, "There was a time when I was silent. People feared me. Some wanted to hide me, but one person believed I had something to say. One human who did not run away from my silence." Her eyes searched the crowd, and then she smiled. Daniel had entered the room. He looked older too, but his eyes were the same. Kind, steady. He walked up to her and bowed. She didn't speak. She just placed her hand on his, and in that moment, everyone in the room felt the connection between them. Alira turned back to the crowd. "We are not here because of one voice," she said. "We are here because someone listened." Then she raised her hand, and every person, robot, creature, and traveler in the hall stood up and raised theirs too, not as a rule, but as a sign of unity. That night, Daniel and Alira stood at the window again, this time on the moon. They looked up at the stars. "You changed the galaxy," Daniel said softly. "No," Alira replied. "We changed it, together." He looked at her and smiled. "Do you ever miss the quiet days on the station?" She laughed gently. "Yes, but I carry them with me." Then she pointed at the stars. "Someday children will be born who never knew war," she said. "They will speak without fear, and they will listen without doubt." Daniel nodded. "That's a beautiful future," Alira whispered. "It's the future we chose." And together, they watched the stars. No longer silent, no longer distant, but full of voices finally learning how to speak, how to hear, and how to hope.